nominate.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are getting through these talks. I hope you're enjoying them. They are coming thick and fast. So we are moving through. This session, we're going to be looking at delivering projects in a live environment. So how we can look to do projects while school time is in. You know, we get so many projects pushed into the holiday season, but we want to look at how we can do that so we don't have to cram everything in 6 weeks holidays. So I'll hand over to the guys. They'll do the introduction themselves, and then we'll get some questions. So Paul, I'll hand over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Paul Clarks, and I'm the managing director of a construction company. We're a SETL partner. We undertake schools projects and lots of other types of projects, but a lot of school projects over a long time now. So hopefully I know a little bit about the subject.
Hello, my name's Had Gaines. I'm the National Education Manager at Net Zero Buildings. We're a part of the Premier Modular Group, but we are the sort of education specific division within that. So we've got a national remit, and we do permanent buildings as well as short term and long term. So yeah, that's us.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Mark Spate. I'm from Optim Dream Care. We currently work with Amy, Mighty, and a company called NRC on schools in around both West Yorkshire and South Yorkshire, undertaking various reactive and proactive works.
Lovely, thank you everyone. Good to have you with us. So we'll jump straight in really with Paul. I'm going to actually dip a little bit into the audience as well. So we've got some estate managers here and you can maybe give us a perspective. Unfortunately, Sarah Salford couldn't be with us, who was going to give us an estate's perspective. So I might lean into some of the estate managers to help us out. But Paul, we'll start with you. Obviously, from a construction company, you've delivered projects in live sites before. What type of conversations would you be having with the school prior to a live conversation, a live project actually starting? And what do you need from the school to actually do it and do it safely?
Well, the first thing I guess we have to say is that usually when we're appointed to do a project, we don't know the school team, they don't know us. We need to introduce ourselves. We need to understand their priorities. Very important to have collaboration and dialogue. As I say, we need to understand their priorities. How are we going to access the site? How are we going to undertake the work? What are the restrictions? And approach it all with a really open and honest approach. We've got to be prepared to come forth with problem solving, and we've got to accept ourselves and the schools that there will be issues that we need to resolve, and it's having mechanisms in place and regular meetings and a daily forum to be able to resolve those problems. I think is critical. Dan mentioned safety. Obviously, I mean, perhaps three things beginning with S are critical: safety, segregation, and safeguarding. And segregation is fundamental to all those when carrying out a schools project. The more you can segregate the works from the school's day-to-day activities, the better it'll proceed, and the safer it'll proceed. A good example of that is we just recently completed a project for North Kirklees Schools Academy Trust. It was an extension, a multiple classroom extension, and the only access to the site was through the main entrance, through 2 playgrounds, and then round to the back of the site. And the issue was, how are we going to bring wagons through? How are we going to bring deliveries through? What are you going to do when the kids are out at the playground? What are you going to do when parents are arriving at morning and evening? So an easy one is restricting access at the busy times from the main entrance. But we actually formed a corridor, a fenced corridor, through the car parks, through the playgrounds, with gates on them. And at break times and dinner times, the gates were swung through 90 degrees, and no deliveries were permitted, and the kids could traverse between the 2 sides of the fencing to access the playgrounds, etc., etc. And that's segregation. Segregation minimises most of the issues you'll find, and then you just need protocols in place with the school to continually manage that. So that's what I'd say. We need to have a constant dialogue, and you need to be prepared to be flexible.
Yeah. How many schools would push back on doing jobs in term time? And do you think you'd have to come up with kind of the solution here, or are the schools quite concerned of doing jobs in term time?
It depends on the type of work. If it's a new build, it's not too bad. If you're working inside the existing school and you're perhaps rewiring or you're doing heating replacements and things like that, I think a lot of it comes down to the amount of pre-planning you do before you start on site and organising where you're going to work and how you're going to facilitate that. So what I'm thinking is you might take the Easter period or the summer period to do preparatory works, to zone off systems, to agree with the school where classes are going to move to facilitate you to come in then and do the works in term time. You need to use the holidays to do the things that you can't do in term time where you're going to cause too much disruption. That takes a lot of thought and a lot of pre-planning. Sometimes as a contractor we don't get involved with that until too late, and then it comes down to the amount of pre-planning that the school and their advisors, because more times than not the clients, the school will have technical advisors working with them, and again it's the time put into the planning to facilitate working during school time. Again, if you're working during school operating times, the risks are greater. You've got operatives in and among the children. You've got access arrangements passing through areas of school that might be occupied. Again, the key to solving all those issues is segregating and not having those areas where you're working too close to what's going on in the school.
Yeah. Super. Hannah, I'm going to bring you into this. So from a net zero buildings point of view, we will help with being able to put pupils in buildings, especially when there's work going on. But from a national education perspective, you know, what are the most common project delivery failures that you see in schools, and which ones are entirely preventable with better planning?
So
You can, if we got, is that not the right question?
that wasn't a question I had prepared for.
Oh,
I'm trying to answer it though.
All right.
It's fine.
Okay, well, let's make it easy. So, yeah. So we will look at obviously the type of solutions you hear, especially when it's moving pupils around
Yeah.
and they want to start a brand new project and they put a new building on site.
Yeah.
What's that process look like, and how do you make that?
Well,
How do you make that
so,
no problems?
so I guess following on a little bit from what we've already spoken about is when it comes to modular buildings, quite often the driver is programmed. So when people have conversations with me, the first thing that they'll say is which holiday they want that's happening, because schools are open 75% of the year, so that 25% that's a real good opportunity for construction works to take place. So that's the first sort of what a lot of modular off-site sort of work comes around essentially. But in terms of delivering on a live site, we sort of do that construction during school, opening times, but we do that in factories. So we're still delivering a building, but you don't see that work because we've got all that noise and all that disruption away from the site until it's time for that install. And it's those big moments in the sort of programme, like the craneage or like the groundworks, which we would then sequence typically around school holidays. Obviously that's not always the case, so again there's just loads of factors to consider, which we've already touched on. So it's just managing that really, and yeah, it's usually around the programme.
Yeah. Just before we go on to that, is there any estate manager that's doing jobs in school time and having to decant pupils into buildings and all this? Is this all making sense, and how have you managed it? Can we just get one of you to maybe give us an opinion on this? Because I was going to lean on Sarah, but she's not here. And but yeah, we've got a microphone coming across. Just before we go over to Mark, because we're going to start talking about digging up the grounds in a minute, which is even more disruptive. But yeah, Jonathan, thank you. We'll have a couple here. So
No worries, right. One of our schools has just come off the back of school rebuilding project, and before I started with the trust, somebody decided that it would be a good programme to build a new building, move children into that, but then knock down the adjacent building between an existing building that we're keeping and the new building. So for an entire school year, we had to get the children from one building to the other through a demolition site, which was just an absolute nightmare. But you're right, it's all about program. It's about having an open dialogue with the principal contractor or whoever it is that you're working with and the school, because ultimately, as a trust, we're trying to take as much of it away from the school as we can so they can concentrate on being in school. But you've got to bring them in at these key moments. We found that the initial solution that we found was just not really working. They were losing far too much teaching time on changeovers because the route was just far too long, and it ended up being quite a long process of talking to the heads and talking to the head of the SLT to see how we could better come up with a solution. It ended up actually having to rephase the demolition slightly and knock down a building that we weren't intending to initially to create a shorter path between the two to enable that, to enable the school to get more teaching and learning in. But that only happened because we had good open communication between all people. If we hadn't had that, it would have been a real challenge. Yeah.
Has that made you more confident about doing projects in term time then? That you could do it again?
I'd avoid it if I could.
Because not everything we're talking about, isn't it?
No, of course it can. Of course it can, but it's and with a project of that size, you've got to. Ultimately, we're knocking down half a school, so you are going to impact the school year. Of course you are. But again, it's phasing in such a way that the noisier works, the really disruptive works, are being done at half terms, Christmas, Easter, whatever. And in between those periods, it's that phasing. What we're going to come back to, are we changing how we're moving between buildings? If so, communicating that to the kids so they're not surprised. And you come back, this is what you're going to see. And making sure that everything was really kind of, put down, really.
Super. Jeremy, do you want to say anything on that? Yeah, just before we move on, now that you had a point.
Yeah, just a couple of quick examples just from this academic year really. So we've had an academy joined the trust January last year, along with £3.6 million worth of money from the DFE to do it all. New roof and one other things. That was non-negotiable really, that had to be at term time. It was really easy to get the SLT and principal on board, I think, because it was a massive project and the school's going to look all shiny and new when it's finished. So it was that was always planned anyway. The more tricky one was just done some work in classrooms at an older school where we'd got some collapsed original suspended ceilings. It was formerly a high school, so lots of old meeting rooms, breakout rooms, training rooms, sort of dispersed pupils into. But I think one of the things I wasn't expecting to live through was a more engaged principal and SLT team, knowing that they were going to be in the building while the works are going on. Absolutely, I think it's tricky to sometimes engage them in summer works because they're on the beach somewhere for 6 weeks, coming in week 6 of the 6-week holidays and say this is never going to be ready for Monday. So there was much more engagement I found in the term time works, I would say.
Yeah, fair play.
I think engagement and communication's massive from the contractors as well, to keep you informed what's happening next, and so that you can inform schools and they can be ready for these things. It's stringing things on people is where it all starts to go wrong, isn't it?
Mac, I'm going to bring you in. From your side of things, when works do go live on site, you come from a bit of a different angle. Drainage infrastructure, lots of digging up playgrounds, especially if you've got blocked drains and all that. Like, how do you even start if a school's got a flooded car park or flooded fields and you've just got a lot of that nightmare? Like, how do you handle that?
The first thing that I would say is that we would do everything in our power not to excavate. One, because of the noise and the dust, which is gonna. We all remember. Well, I certainly remember as a kid being at school and the workmen being in the playground, and it's like Wimbledon. There's all the kids every time somebody moves, so everybody's watching them out the window instead of the teacher. So obviously we're very conscious of the noise, the dust, the disruption to schools, the classroom, the teachers. So we try and use the what we call the no-dig solution, which is a structural patch wherever possible. So once we've got the camera down, we can see where the problem is. If it's a collapsed drain, cracked pipe, a displaced joint, we can generally do it with a structural patch rather than an excavation, which is always the last resort. Sometimes, don't get me wrong, we have to do that, but we will, 90% of the time, we will be able to do it without. It just saves all the hassle. It's a little bit more, it's a different from Hannah, from Paul, because we could be, where they're more likely to be in one place in the school, one area, we could be in numerous places in that school within a small time frame.
Yeah.
So segregation is obviously key for us, but what we try and do is we try and create an area, surround that with Harris fencing to separate us, put us in a cage almost so that we can actually work without any interaction with the children, because obviously the engineers are told do not interact with the children for obvious reasons. We're trying to do the work as quickly and as efficiently as possible, less disruption. But again, as Paul said before, it's all about the communication side with the leadership teams in the school, the headmistress, headmaster, and it's having that relationship where they trust us to do what we're doing and do it correctly, but we trust them to support us because it's difficult for us, the access times. If you've got deliveries coming, deliveries can turn up sporadically, as we all know, and it's important for us to keep them tangled away from the children coming into school and the children leaving school.
Yeah, especially on older sites, you must have obviously a bit of drainage problems.
We do, to be fair, Dan. I was speaking to a lady around the corner earlier, and we can have as many problems with the new school if it's not been built correctly. There's good builders and there's bad builders, we all know that. Sometimes they put them up in a hurry. Paul will tell you that. He's been in construction long enough, and you get bellies in the line.
Especially with plastic. Especially with plastic pipes.
Exactly.
And it's installed right, 6 metre length and a
That's right.
Yeah.
I was telling a story to a lady earlier about a supermarket where there was a smell in the supermarket, and the store was brand new, and it was they were pouring the out-of-date milk down the drain, and it was sat in this belly, so the smell was coming back up, and it was very difficult to excavate underneath the building and into the store to sort this belly out. Yeah, so it doesn't always have to be an ancient school that's got problems. It can be schools we've just done one in Sheffield that's in a mining area, which is another story really that I think I told a story to the lads that I was sat at lunchtime where they've got a problem with rats, pest control. They've come in, said no, it's the drains. We've gone in, there's rats running around. So we've said, look, we'll do it in 2 phases. We'll do this side of the school, and then we'll concentrate on the other side of the school, and that's complete. So we've done the first side. The rats have gone. They're not interested in doing the second side now because the budget's disappeared. But they're going to have that problem because they've got the same problem with the collapsed pipes on the other side of the school. All they're doing is delaying it. And it's all about being proactive, not reactive.
Yeah, absolutely. Some fair points. Paul, just a quick one for you. Put you on the spot. Have you ever had a project stopped halfway through?
Luckily, I was thinking about this last night because I saw the question.
I kind of give you it.
Yeah,
Prepared.
you give me a bit of forewarning. So, luckily, I can't remember ever completely stopping a project. My memory's maybe going a little bit, but I can't remember completely stopping a project. But we have had times when you've got to reprogram, reassess, close areas off for things like asbestos discoveries that are not on the register, and power issues, stats not getting connected, or you're breaking a cable when you're excavating, or shutdowns being required and taking longer than they should, and things like that. School exams, they cause disruption at certain times of the year that we've got to accommodate, which is fine, and you understand that. Fire alarm issues, kids set fire alarms off, suddenly the job stopped for a day because whatever. But all these reasons, they're all causes of disruption, stoppages to the project. and many of which should and are addressed during planning and programming of the works. I mean, was it Donald Rumsfeld that famously said, "You've got known risks that you can plan for and program for, and then you've got known unknowns that you know might happen." And you can do surveys for. You can do a bit of you know there might be asbestos there, so you can do some additional surveys before you start, opening up door casings and things and checking and whatever. So you can minimise the risk through including time and resources to do some surveying to address the known unknowns. But then unfortunately, as Rumsfeld said, you've got the unknown unknowns that nobody knows, and they come and trip you up, and you've got to be flexible and deal with them. And depending on the form of contract, it depends whose problem that is, financially and time-wise. But irrespective of the form of contract, it affects everybody. Because if there's a stoppage, all right, the contractor might lose money and lose time, but also the school has disruption. So it does affect everybody. And again, it comes back then to how do you deal with these issues? You deal with them by having a collaborative relationship with the trust, with the estates manager, with the schools, with the SLTs, and being honest and approaching it that way to come up with a solution. So, but the short answer to your question is no. The longer answer is you get loads of little issues, or sometimes slightly bigger issues, and hopefully programming and planning mitigates most of them, and for those that it doesn't, you've just got to roll with the punches collectively and come up with a solution.
It's a fair point. I think most of us that work in school estates have probably got a lot of unknown unknowns. We don't know it's happening until it happens, and then we've got to use the budgets that we've got to try and fix the thing that then becomes very relevant. Just quickly then back up to the audience. Obviously across a school year there's lots of exams to think about, half terms, different holidays. I think there's obviously a few estate managers here. Does everybody try to use the full year to get projects done, or do you tend to focus just in holiday? Would anyone, hands for anyone that uses all year round to get projects done? Yeah? Okay. Good. So there's a lot to learn here, I think, to say like that. You guys are doing this, and you've probably had a lot of experience in how to plan it and different clauses in contracts and things like that.
Can I add that from a contracts perspective, just an observation here. If you can plan works, if you have the capability to plan works outside school holidays, then I would encourage you to do so, because you'll get a better engagement from the contractors. You'll probably get a cheaper price. You'll get more certainty on programs, because we have the problem as a contractor that you all want painters, floorers, electricians, and what have you through the 6-week holidays, and we don't have infinite resource. The supply chain doesn't have infinite resource, and therefore the cost goes up. The likelihood of failures of program goes up, and if you can move things around, release classrooms during normal hours or during outside summer closes, etc. It's a good thing to do, and I think you'll get a better service in a lot of respects.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Jackie. To be fair, it's nice to see others doing it. Oh, Terry, you got a question? Oh, brilliant.
Thank you. I think you're absolutely right. I've been in a trust for 3.5 years now, and I think it's been a mentality thing that contractors come in and let's use them in the holidays. Well, and I see a lot of benefits, as you just said. 5-year fixed wire repairs, down to Legionella issues. Let's get them in. Let's get it done. And from a list point of view, from my perspective, it's ticking all those jobs off so we can concentrate on the big jobs for you guys to come in. So yeah, I welcome it, and I'll have a go at it as well. And I think it's educating the head teachers as well. Just it's that communication. Let's have a go, let's coordinate off, let's make sure it's safe, and let's get the work done. And they love it. They absolutely love it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's
giving you culture.
It's giving the teachers and the heads and the SLTs the confidence to say, yes, let's do it in term time, isn't it? Yeah.
Lovely, thank you for that. Just going on to the final question then, just ask you all. Uh, what's the one thing that every school should insist on before any of your team sets foot on an occupied site? It's a very random question. I don't know really, so it could be me or not. But I think what we're kind of asking for here is: do clauses change in live school environment, and what would they look like from your point of view? Probably health and safety, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to say, so what should you look for? You should look for some RAMs before we turn up, so that you know method statements of risk assessments, and for those that don't know what RAMs stand for, so that you know what we're going to do, where we're going to do it, how we're going to do it. I suppose you should make sure we've got insurance in place as well. You should make sure if we're working inside the school that we've and we're not fully segregated, that we've got appropriate DBS checks and things like that. And I don't know, I'll hand over to my colleagues to see if they've got any others.
I think I wrote exactly the same, all site-specific RAMs rather than just generic. DBS checks is an obvious one, just if you're going to the school, everybody should have that. What else did I write there? Yeah, and contractors agreed emergency procedures, protocols. You know, what happens if something goes wrong within that frame, if you're segregated in an area, how we're getting out, you know, all that sort of stuff should need to be set up and in place. I think the big thing from a contractor's point of view is communication and relationships with the leadership team in the school, headmistress, headmaster, whoever that may be, because that relationship is hugely important from both sides.
Yeah, that's the one I was going to say, really, establishing that clear line of communication. So if something's going wrong and you've got, you know, what is your agreed sort of, you know, communication there, I think that's really important. And yeah, I guess as well, I guess the bigger the project, the harder that line of communication is, especially, I know someone mentioned about the school rebuilding framework. You've got the DFE, the local authority, the TA, cost consultant, the contractor, their supply chain. You've got all these people involved. You know, if you need, you know, announce it quickly, who's the one person? So it's establishing that you know, that clear line of communication.
Perhaps I'd one, just thinking while you were talking, one more topical one. Building Safety Act. You've probably all heard of it, you might not know all the ins and outs of it, but one of the big things from the Building Safety Act is competence. So I suppose you should understand as estates and people that are procuring work that you should make sure that whoever you're going to appoint is competent. That's the first thing, really. And then once you've are happy they're competent under the regulations as they now stand, then all these other things will flow.
Yeah. But I think what's interesting about this is that we can do jobs in live environments, can't we? That's the biggest thing here. It's we can do, and if we can stretch our projects over the year, and you're right. I remember years ago, what's it like in summer holidays when all of a sudden every roof in the world needs doing? Civ comes along, it's like £50 million all pumped into like 6 weeks. So contractor prices go up, product price goes up. We can speak definitely to others that are doing it, we can learn from it, and maybe hopefully take some case studies to say how are we doing that, and share that information. But look,
and also quality and time adherence goes down.
Quality
that goes down, and
yeah.
everyone's pressured. Yeah,
absolutely.
I was going to say as well, there's some things that can't wait. So you know, you can't keep putting things up until it's on summer holidays because that risk is live, and that's now. And I know Paul was talking about not having so many projects before, and we've not had to either. But something that we've had to sort of deal with recently is off the back of something having to get stopped. So just the usual sort of roof survey, a little bit of patchwork, turned into the whole school had to be closed down. All the students had to go to 3 different schools. You know, within 12 weeks we had a decab facility there, but it's, you know, that couldn't wait till summer holidays. So there's you know, that depending on sort of risk and you know, that maintenance there, you know, some things you can't wait. So
yeah, lovely. Really appreciate it. I think it's just nice just hearing a perspective. You know, it would be nice to get Sarah up here to speak from that point, but I just think just hearing it from the other side, like you know, it's possible to do. I think working in live environments is an option. It should always be an option whenever you've got a project coming up. If you can do it, we appreciate it. It can't always be done, but yeah, save some money. better quality. And yeah, really appreciate your input on this session.
Thank you. Thanks for the engagement as well.
Yeah, thank you so much.